Bills demolish Browns again, and the real story isn't even the score. Buffalo, we need to talk. Your Bills just did it again. Back-to-back weeks, back-to-back beatdowns, and this time it wasn't close for a second longer than it needed to be. 31-7. That's the final. 2-0 in the preseason. And look, I know what you're thinking. Preseason doesn't count. None of this matters. Wait for the regular season. Sure, fine. But what happened on that field in Cleveland, and more importantly, what happened off of it, tells you everything about where this franchise is headed. So buckle up, because I've got clips, I've got storylines, and I've got one moment from this weekend that is going to hit you right in the chest. Stick around to the end for that one. But first, let's get into the chaos. This game almost didn't even happen the way we expected. Just a couple of plays into the opening drive, the skies over Huntington Bank Field opened up and lightning sent everybody running for cover. Storms rolled through, the tarps came out, players ducked into the locker rooms, and fans sat around wondering if this whole thing was getting scrapped. But once the weather cleared, Buffalo came out and made sure nobody remembered the delay, they only remembered the beating. The Bills outgained Cleveland by well over 150 yards on the day, and by the time the final whistle blew, this thing had been blown wide open in the second half after a tight 7-7 battle at the break. 2 weeks in a row now, Buffalo has taken care of business, following up a win over Carolina with an emphatic statement in Cleveland. And folks, the story here isn't just that they won, it's who made them win. Let's start with the name that had me buzzing before the internet even caught up. Jordan Hancock. Write it down if you haven't already, because this kid's instincts are turning into something special. Watch him closely on tape and you start to see flashes of that same kind of ball-hawking anticipation we used to get excited about with Cam Lewis in his early days. There's a play where Deshaun Watson drops back, and up top of your screen, you can see Hancock already reading the route before the ball even leaves the quarterback's hand. That's not luck. That's a young defensive back who is starting to process the game at a completely different speed than he was a season ago. Later in the game, you watch him get pressed into man coverage. Initially get pushed a step behind, and then recover in real time, diagnosing that the ball is going out into the flat before it's even thrown. He fights through not one, but two blockers, a tight end and a receiver, splits them clean, and gets to the football fast enough to slow the whole play down for his teammates. Now look, he didn't finish the tackle on that one. We have to be honest about that. But setting the tackle up, getting skinny through traffic, doing the dirty work so somebody else can finish the job, that's winning football in the trenches of a secondary. I am genuinely excited about what Jordan Hancock is becoming in this defense, and he wasn't alone out there making plays that matter more than the box score shows. Ben Van Sumeren had a hit on special teams that might still be echoing around Lake Erie. He comes across in motion and just detonates on an unsuspecting Browns player, the kind of collision that makes the guy on the business end of it forget what quarter it is. You could see him pop back up trying to catch his breath, trying to remember his own name. That's the identity Buffalo wants on special teams. Guys who show up looking to hit somebody. Then there's the rookie cornerback everybody's been keeping an eye on, Davison Igbinosun. This kid came in with some question marks, some wondering if general manager Brandon Beane reached a little on him in the draft. But watch him against the run. Buffalo's cornerbacks got exposed last year on those bigger outside zone runs. Running backs bouncing it to the boundary and just having their way. Igbinosun is a bigger corner, somewhere around 6'2", one of the larger frames at the position in his whole draft class, and he is showing up and setting the edge, making boundary tackles on backs that used to run right through Buffalo's perimeter defenders. That's a real tangible fix to a real tangible problem from a year ago. Up front, TJ. Sanders deserves some credit too, even in a game where he didn't rack up a highlight sack or a splash play. Watch him hold his ground against the Cleveland offensive line on a run play. He lines up, gets pushed by a guard trying to move him off the ball and create a running lane, and Sanders just says no. He does not budge. He clogs the gap, forces the running back to hesitate, and that hesitation is exactly what opens the door for a teammate to clean up the tackle. It's not flashy, it's not going to trend on social media. But that's coaching showing up on tape, and a lot of credit here goes to how the staff, especially on the defensive line side, is putting him in position to succeed.
Teddy Bridgewater.
Now let's talk backfield, because Buffalo's running back room might be the deepest, most fun position group on the entire roster right now. There's real chatter that Ty Johnson might not be ready for week 1. Maybe he starts on injured reserve to open the year. Normally that would be a 5-alarm fire for a fan base, except this year it might not even matter, because the depth behind him is that good. Raheem Blackshear has been electric. Frank Gore Jr. is carrying that Buffalo bloodline with pride and making defenders miss in the open field. Ian Wheeler, that's a name you need to remember, because every single time he touches the football, he looks like he's improvising an entire adventure story, running through arm tackles, spinning off defenders, hurdling bodies, doing whatever it takes to squeeze out those extra tough yards. And then, of course, there's James Cook, the reigning rushing champion himself, sitting there as the unquestioned bell cow. When your RB6 or RB7 is making you excited on tape, that's a good problem to have heading into on the offensive side of the ball. The receiver room might be the single most fascinating storyline of this entire training camp. Buffalo may genuinely have 7 or 8 wide receivers who have shown enough this preseason to make a real case for a roster spot, and that math simply does not work out for everybody. Jamori Macklin has been putting himself firmly in that conversation. There's a play where he hauls in a perfectly placed throw in stride and takes it the distance for a touchdown. His speed and his lateral quickness getting him wide open before turning on the jets to the house. He also came up huge in a 2-minute drill, hauling in a big-time throw that helped set up another score. A lot of people going into this camp had him pegged as a bubble player. Maybe a practice squad candidate if things didn't break his way. That conversation is changing fast. And then there's the veteran presence of Trent Sherfield, who looks like he's added some serious size this offseason. Maybe the product of leaning even harder into his special teams role, but also showing he can still be that steady physical target working the middle of the field. There's a route where he comes across on a critical 3rd and long and just wins, moving the chains in a spot where Buffalo desperately needed somebody to make a play. If the coaching staff is looking for a Mac Hollins type, a receiver who does the dirty work, blocks in the run game, and shows up when the offense needs a chain mover, Sherfield is making his case loudly. At quarterback 2, Kyle Allen looks like he has all but locked up that job. Some of the joint practice reps against Cleveland earlier in the week were a little shaky, a little rough around the edges. But on Saturday, in live football, Allen was decisive and sharp, completing the overwhelming majority of his throws for well over 100 yards and a touchdown. He connected with Sherfield on some long completions and delivered that big strike to Macklin in the 2-minute drill. Buffalo trusts this guy. Josh Allen trusts this guy. And on tape right now, it is hard to argue that anybody is meaningfully pushing him for that backup job. Not every storyline from Cleveland was as encouraging though, and we have to be honest about the growing pains too. Jude Bowery, the rookie offensive tackle out of Boston College, has had a difficult camp, and it continued into this game. There's a rep where he simply cannot hold up against an edge rusher, allowing pressure to get home in a way that, if this were the regular season with Josh Allen back there instead of a backup, would be a real problem. He's got a long way to go before he's ready to count. But here's where I need you to sit up, because everything I just told you, all the highlights, all the hustle plays, all the roster battles, they all take a back seat to what happened after the game when head coach Joe Brady stepped up to the podium. Buffalo fans already knew that starting defensive tackle Ed Oliver had not been with the team, and up to this point, most of us assumed it was simply an injury being managed quietly and privately, the kind of thing teams don't always explain in detail during camp. That is not what this is. Joe Brady confirmed that Ed Oliver has been away from the team dealing with the devastating, heartbreaking loss of his son. I want to be really careful with how I say this, because this isn't a storyline, this is a man's life. And what struck me listening to Joe Brady speak about it wasn't just that he acknowledged it, it's how he talked about it. He talked about being there for Ed as a father, would be there for another man going through something unimaginable, giving him privacy, giving him space, letting Ed dictate how he wants this handled, rather than conferences were a little rougher around the edges. A lot of pauses, a lot of feeling his way through the moment as a first-time head coach. This was different. This was a 36-year-old man showing genuine care for one of his players as a human being first, and a football player a distant second. That's leadership. That's the kind of locker room culture that gets built not through scheme or through X's and O's, but through moments like this one, when a head coach chooses compassion over convenience. And look, none of that takes away from everything else happening on that roster right now, because this is a team that is building real depth and real identity heading into cutdown day. You've got a secondary that's developing playmakers like Jordan Hancock and Davison Igbinosun. You've got a defensive front getting steadier reps out of guys like TJ Sanders. You've got arguably the deepest running back room in franchise memory, and a wide receiver group so stacked that roster decisions are going to be genuinely painful. You've got a backup quarterback in Kyle Allen who looks like exactly the insurance policy you want behind Josh Allen. And you've got a head coach who through 2 preseason games is showing you both tactical growth on the field and real emotional intelligence off of it. So where does that leave Buffalo heading into the final week of the preseason? 2-0 doesn't punch a ticket to anywhere, everybody knows that. But what this preseason has shown, game after game, clip after clip, is a roster with layers. Not just the household names you already knew about, but a second and third wave of players who are forcing their way into real conversations about who makes this 53-man roster. That's exactly what you want out of August. You want difficult decisions. You want position battles that keep you up at night as a coaching staff. Buffalo has that in spades right now, and it's a very, very good sign heading into a season where this team has bigger goals than just preseason blowouts. Alright, that's what I've got for you today. Big win, big development, and a moment of real perspective from Joe Brady that I think says a lot about the kind of program being built in Buffalo. Let me know down in the comments what stood out to you the most, whether it's Jordan Hancock's growth, the receiver battle heating up, or Joe Brady's leadership in a really tough moment. If you enjoyed this breakdown, do me a favor and smash that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. We've got a lot more film to break down before the regular season kicks off, and I don't want you missing a single second of it. Go Bills, and I will see you in the next video.